Hey, hello, and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and we got a great show this evening. We have Danny Sheehan's coming in. He said he's going to be running a little bit late, so I'm going to be bringing my good friend Bill Skywatcher in, and we're going to be talking about Pine Bush. I'm going to be out at Contact at the Desert, so if you're going to be out there, I would really love to hang out, and maybe you could be part of one of the recordings that I'm doing. Next week, it's going to be some of the interviews that I'm going to be doing out at Contact in the Desert. Following week, I'm going to be in Pine Bush at the conference out there. Then that's what I'm going to talk to Bill about. So today we have the blog this week is UFO photos taken in 1977 by a young boy in Indiana. That's by Charles Lear. A very popular show when Charles was on. There's a lot of downloads on that. So I'm really glad that a lot of people have learned to really respect and like the work that he does on historic UFO cases. So he's a great guy and glad to have him on. So we have someone claiming to be Bob Lazar. Hey, Bob Lazar. He's just here observing. He's in the chat. So I thought that was kind of humorous. But with that, I'd like to bring in, I thought this was very interesting when George Knapp finally admitted that he doesn't think that Bob Lazar's education is legit. So I'm just going to put that in. Every time I talk about Bob Lazar, that I don't believe his story. Yes, Bob in chat, I do not believe. He just said his good buddy Contact, his good buddy George Knapp. Yes, sirree, Bob. I think we had a Lou Elizondo in here before, and he spelled Lou's first name wrong, but that's okay. But anyway, a little flattery there, I suppose, in some ways. But here is a clip of George Knapp, and I want you to take a listen to this. It's pretty interesting.
Identified him. We said we could not verify his background. And I will confide to you this. I don't believe he ever went to those schools. I don't believe Bob Lazar could get a degree from Caltech or MIT for a very simple reason. At American universities, when you get a degree, an undergraduate degree, you have to take all kinds of core courses in subjects that you may not be interested in. Literature. I cannot possibly imagine, and Anna, Bob, I can't imagine Bob Lazar sitting through a class in American Lit or reading poetry or something like that. He'd never stand for it. There is no way in hell that he sat through that stuff to get a degree. So what do we do? What do we do with that? Do we throw out the story? Here's how I rationalize it: is Bob would not be the first person to lie about his educational credentials in order to get a good job. As his friend of a long time, I've given him the opportunity. Bob, look, come clean on this. Let me know about if it's a lie. Come clean on it. Get it behind you. And he's never given me that satisfaction of saying, yeah, it's a lie. He maintains the story. I don't know what the true story is, whether they could make his records disappear. I have found people who said he was at Caltech, who said that they remember him being on the campus, but that's not enough to make the point. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter. I don't care whether Bob Lazar went to Caltech. The fact that he would lie about it is problematic, but I don't think it's a reason to toss out the entire story, because people do lie about their background in order to get a great job.
Well, I personally don't agree with that all the way through. Oh, Bob, he's saying naughty things about George Knapp. How about that? But anyway, and that's not a real clip. That's not a real clip. I like that one. But anyway, I'm not going to go into a lot of arguing about this. To me, if someone's going to lie about their education, how can you believe the rest of it? He wasn't lying to these people that he was trying to get a job, George Knapp. He was lying to us about his education. I don't think he was lying to those people. Maybe he was, but he was definitely lying to us. He wasn't trying to get a job with us. He was trying to prove to us that he saw alien craft in Area 51. That's what he was doing to us, not for a job, just to make that perfectly clear. But anyway, I'm going to bring in my friend Bill here. Bill, welcome.
What's happening?
Nice to
what
see
the
you.
Heck did I walk into just now with this Lazar stuff?
Well, if it wasn't for this fake Bob Lazar, whoops, I shouldn't have called him fake Bob Lazar. It might be him. If it wasn't for Bob Lazar in the chat You know, I would have been nice and quiet about this, but anyway, I just thought I'd bring that little clip up. And by the way, you know, going a little further on that, you know, I have a connection at MIT that all she does is records, and she can go back into the records that cannot be expunged. There was never a Bob Lazar, Robert Lazar in any type of way at MIT. So anyway, I don't know what to say about that. I know that you have heard that there's from someone credible that he's legit, but I'm still not buying it. I'd have to see.
All right, wait. I'm just gonna touch this. I'm just gonna touch it. I'm not gonna go crazy with this, but
I just like what Thomas said.
you have to realize what he was doing as a teenager, the ingenuity, because there is incredible stuff that he was doing as a teenager. Now, if scientists were, let's just say, doing the same old, and they're stuck on a certain way of looking at things, wouldn't they want a whiz kid to maybe look at things from outside the box?
I understand that type of.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. But listen, Danny just came in. He's in now. Danny, we can see you in there. Just 1 minute. We're going to wrap this up. Let's talk about. I'll be out at Contact next week. Please look me up, Martin at podcastufo.com. And then the week after, I'll be in Pine Bush. Bill, real quickly in Pine Bush.
Oh, it's going to be the keynote. You're going to be the MC. Mark D'Antonio will be there. Marianne, Rob, Dave Rich. Looking forward to seeing everybody. Go to pinebushmuseum.com. And we look forward to having you. Have a great show with Danny. I am out of here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Danny. Oh, I can hardly see you, Danny.
Let me see here. What's happening? Here we go.
There you are. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you again.
Fine.
Yeah.
You're doing them back to back today.
Yes. Well, you are too, from what I understand.
Yeah, right. I just got off like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, that's right. Well, good to see you. And I'll be seeing you out at Contact in the Desert. And last time we saw each other was in line in Washington, D.C. during the hearing. And that's always, you've been to both hearings, the same as myself.
That's right.
And, you know, it's really, I think, I don't know how you feel about it, but the first one just felt so historic. You know, and the second one was like, okay, we did this once already. But the first one, just didn't that seem like amazing? The first one.
Yeah, it's amazing compared to what they've been doing in the past. You know, it's minimal in comparison to what's going to be happening. You know, I mean, once the 40 eyewitnesses from deep inside the whole program start coming forward, and Congress develops the spine to make them public. You know, I mean, the Senate Intelligence Committee's interviewed these people under oath. You know, they've got depositions of them already. They know what the information is, but they're not telling it to the people. You know, so that we need to organize the citizens and make the Senate Intelligence Committee in the Senate have hearings revealing what it is they know.
Danny, once you just said something just now that I want you to elaborate on as an attorney, as a powerful attorney that you have been over the years, and amazing cases, involvement in Aaron Brockovich and all kinds of things. But as an attorney, if someone lied, like David Grusch lied under oath, or any of the three, say in the first, Ryan Graves and the pilot, I'm just skipping his name right now.
Fravor. Yeah.
David Fravor. If any of those people lied under oath and were caught lying under oath, what would happen to them?
Well, it isn't. I don't think that's the issue, because the things that they were saying are not perjury. Because, like, for example, the David Grusch was saying, based on my investigations and discussion with over 40 people, I'm telling you that I believe that we have, one or more non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft. You know, when you look at that from a lawyer's point of view, you know, that he's not declaring that he knows it to an absolute certainty himself. He's not saying that he's laid his hands on the craft. He's not, interviewed. Now, on the other hand, you have Jay Stratton in this new upcoming documentary called The Age of Disclosure, right on camera, saying, I have been in the room with a non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft. And I have seen with my own eyes an extraterrestrial non-human being. But he's not under oath.
I see. Yeah.
And he's not testifying to a so the question arises, why hasn't the House Oversight Committee or the Senate Intelligence Committee called Jay Stratton into a public hearing and have him say that under oath so that they can't keep shilly-shallying around and saying, well, we've never been told by any firsthand witness that he's actually seen one of these extraterrestrial beings, or that he's actually, been in a room with what he knows to be an extraterrestrial spacecraft. And the question we have to ask, why aren't they doing that? And so the answer is because the problem is that our democratic system, as is presently operating, are still under the domination of a national security state. The national security state people still frighten the members of Congress. Just like when Senator Frank Church chaired the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence Abuse and pressed the CIA and started revealing the fact that they were smuggling drugs, they were assassinating people, etc. He was out of office the very next time because millions of dollars of money mysteriously came in through the South African banks out of the Nugan Bank from Australia and into his campaign, revealing the fact that he supported the Equal Rights Amendment. This is an activity of our national security state. These are the people that that we granted the privilege, inappropriately, in my opinion, to be able to do these things abroad, theoretically, for the protection of our American people, and they brought it home. And they're using these weapons against our own people. And so the Congress is afraid of them. And so what we've got to do is we've either got to put people into Congress who are not afraid of these people, or we've got to get these people who are in there to stop being afraid of these people. And that's our job as citizens, because they know, and the national security state people know, that 95% of all the people in the country don't even pay attention to these things.
That's right.
They don't exercise their democratic rights. They vote, once every 4 years, when there's a presidential election. It drops down to 33% of the people or something vote, in primaries, and they let the government be run by somebody else. And the somebody else is now a national security state. And so we see them doing things, and people are now getting distressed over the fact that it's come to full fruition, where we have an authoritarian, dictatorial type government in place right now. And people are going, oh, well, the national security state people support them. So that's the problem, Martin.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental problem that we've got.
Back to the Schumer rounds, that bill that they were trying to push through. Do you think they went a little too far when they were trying to do the eminent domain? Do you think that was the thing that was too far that made everybody go, whoa, you're not getting your hands on this? No,
didn't make everybody go wild. It made the aerospace corporations go wild, and then what they started doing is spending millions of dollars because they're bribing congressmen and senators flat out. They're bribing them. They're giving them tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign
funds.
This is not rocket science here. You pay somebody hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions, and they say, you either vote for protecting this secrecy and let me get a private patent on this technology so I can make billions of dollars, or else, we're going to throw you out of office. And that's what they're doing. And they're cheek by jowl with the national security state, and they're providing the military equipment for the national security state, and the national security state are providing the tens of billions of dollars in contracts to them. It's this entire symbiotic relationship, just exactly what Eisenhower warned everybody about, back in 1960 in his farewell speech. He said, look at, and he was being gracious. He said, whether intended or not, You have to be careful of them acquiring this extraordinary power, whether intended or not. He knew perfectly well that it was intended.
Yeah.
This isn't an
Yeah.
accident that these people have come to power the way they have. And we've got to do something about it. We've got to take advantage of the fact that 99% of the people in the country want to know about the UFO stuff. That 99% of the people in the country want to know that there's an extraterrestrial civilization coming and going from our planet. They want to know what those people know, what kind of technologies they have, what kind of progress we can make in medical terms and stuff. That we want to know that. We feel that we're being deprived of important information. And not only that, we're being lied to. I mean, lied to actively by the national security state.
Do you think it would be impartial of the possibility of weaponizing some type of reverse technology in some type of way, and like a power grab for, say, if it's our country that has these things, trying to get kind of like nuclear arms in a way, trying to get that head on, the powerful, whatever it is, for against our adversaries as a threat of some kind.
Well, sure. I mean, the problem is that our national security state people are actively engaged in basically shooting down UFOs to try to get their hands on the technology, so that they, the national security state people, can back engineer the technology into making a whole new generation of weapons, so that they can establish full spectrum military dominance over the planet. We know that from the 1992 United States Defense Department Policy Planning Guidance document, that when we finally persuaded Gorbachev to dissolve the Soviet Union, to step back out of the arms race with the United States, back out of the Cold War, what happened is the George Bush Sr. administration and Dick Cheney, who was the Secretary of Defense, he and Paul Wolfowitz, his deputy, convene a meeting and say, oh, good, look we've gotten the Soviet Union to back out now, so let's establish full military dominance over the planet. Let's take advantage of the fact that they've stepped back and not cut back on our military budget that we've been justifying for the last 80 years on the grounds that we keep saying the Soviet Union is going to be attacking us coming across the polar ice caps. That now that they've dissolved themselves and actively stepped out of the entire race against us, what do? We step into the breach and say we want to establish full spectrum dominance over the planet. And this is a matter of record. This is in the 1992 United States Defense Department Policy Planning Guidance document. And so that they flat out said what they're doing, and so that we know that the national security state has risen to power in our country right now. And they are the ones that have been lying to us for 80 years about this technology, because they've been trying to figure out how to back engineer this technology to give them a special new complete and total dominating advantage over every other nation state in the world. Okay. So, and it says right in the document, so they can maintain our continued privileged access to the strategic raw materials needed by our major industries. Wow. Oh no, there's a really great motive. That's something to really get up out of bed every morning to be applying your trade to, but we don't agree with that. That is not what our country, our democracy is supposed to be engaged in right now.
Yeah, I feel like there's, some could say there's a lot of recent corruption, but I would say that there's been corruption for a long time. And we like to think about our country, the U.S., as we're here, like we like to think we're the good guys or whatever. But there's corruption. There's corruption. There's been corruption for a long time. And, maybe not as bad as some of these other countries. I know firsthand through people about Russia and their corruption, just from a connection that I had there, a number of years ago. But still, we have it, and it's maybe dressed a little differently, but we do have it in different ways. And like you said, campaign contributions, the lobbying system, these are all things the lobbying system is great when it's used properly, but not for the way it's used.
No, I
but
mean,
anyway,
when you bring in, it used to be you bring in a bag full of cash of $100 bills and put it on their table and say, here, I want you to vote for something that's going to increase my profits by millions of dollars. Somebody used to come in and slap handcuffs on you and throw you in jail.
yeah,
And now they're doing it right out in the open. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like the last interview I saw. They said, "Oh, wait a second, don't you think that the president, in this case Trump, offering to sell a cryptocurrency with his face on it, and getting hundreds of billions of dollars of people sending money to him, and using the White House in which to do it, and then showing them around the top investors in his private financial coin, money coming into his pocket, and he gives them a private tour of the White House and is a reward for it. And and the argument that his supporters are making is, oh, well, he's doing it right out in front. He's not sneaking around about it. I'm not sure whether that's good news or not. He's doing it right in your face.
Yeah.
This type of corruption is a very special kind of corruption. That this isn't just people taking money under the table. What this is the attempt of the private major banking institutions and major stockholders in the major corporations that own and control the major resources in our country, dating all the way back to the robber baron era. That they've joined together, and what they've said is that that we are going to control the government. We are going to make the decisions of the government, and now we're going to give a tax break to the richest 1% of the people in the country.
Mhm.
And people are all going, oh, I'm not sure that's fair, but wait till it starts to bite. Wait till they start to lose their health coverage. Wait till they start to lose their Social Security. Wait till they start to lose the education of their kids. That type of corruption is going to be recognized. But the kind of corruption that's involved in keeping secret the UFO secrets is a much deeper level. And that is this whole kind of common agreement that they've made that it's okay for our national security state apparatus to establish full military dominance over the planet. And that's okay. That we have 800 foreign military bases of the United States all over the world.
I didn't realize it was that many.
Yeah, I know you didn't. I know, and you're well informed. But
Wow.
the fact is, it is that many. 800 U.S. military bases all over the world. We have our budget, our annual military budget is bigger than the top other 10 countries in the entire world.
Yeah.
And that includes Russia and China and India and France and and people just sit back and don't quite notice what's going on. It's like living in Rome and not noticing that they're an empire.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got some people are going to be posting questions here and there. So a question for you is, do you think this will finally be the summer of disclosure? And he wants to thank you for your legendary work.
Yeah, not the summer. We'll get in mid-July. We will get the United States Senate to reintroduce the 64-page, former Senate Bill 2226, which is the Schumer-Rounds bill.
Okay? Oh, I hope so.
That will get passed, and it will go into the National Defense Authorization. It'll go into the management package, they call it. The management package is what the leadership of the Republican and Democratic Party leaders in the Senate agree they're going to put into the National Defense Authorization Act. Okay? And they'll agree to do that because the leadership in both political parties agree that they want to do this. Okay? And so that'll come in. And then it's going to go over during the August break. It's going to go over to the House side. Now, we've already succeeded in getting rid of Michael Turner, who was the Republican head of the House Intelligence Committee. He is from the home district of the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. And they've got a whole collective of these aerospace corporations gathered all around Wright-Patterson who are just hogging out at the trough, to get at money to help back engineer this technology of the UFOs. And that's one of the bases where it's centered of what they're doing there. And that's his home base. So that he was just completely out of control in stopping that bill from getting passed last year. He doesn't understand that there's been a decision made on the part of major forces in our country to get this information revealed. He doesn't understand it. So he was completely out of step. And so he's bounced. He's out. And now Crenshaw is the fellow that's in there now from Missouri. So we are in the process of sharing information with his staff, getting him to understand how important this is, what the alternative technologies are that are available here, what the alternative options are for energy that we have. We're sharing this information with him. And so that we know that there are certain Democrats, Gonzalez, for example, who will introduce the bill, the Senate bill over on the House side. But the Republicans don't care about anything any Democrats put in because they're in charge over there. So what we've got to do is try to get a major Republican member of the House of Representatives to champion the Democratic, U.S. Senate bill that is passed by the Republican Senate when it comes over to them during the August break. When they come back from the August break in early September, they need to take up the vote. We need to, by that time, by the 1st of September, by Labor Day, we have to have persuaded some influential members of the House of Representatives to co-sponsor the Senate bill over on the House side and to get that passed. Even if we were to get this passed, there's still another process that needs to take place. It's not going to happen all this summer. The fact of the matter is that even if we get it passed, it isn't going to pass until December 22nd, to be exact. They're going to vote on the National Defense Authorization Act. And if we succeed in getting the House of Representatives to approve the Senate bill, which is going to get passed, if we can get them to do that, then what's going to happen is the National Defense Authorization Act, which will contain this 64 pages, will pass. And then what will happen is the president will receive from us, the New Paradigm Institute, and others who have been authorized to nominate people to this 9-person panel that is called for by the Senate bill to establish a 9-person board of review who will review all of the information that is in the possession of the United States government, which has already been ordered to be gathered and prepared to be handed over to the National Archives. We succeeded in getting that done back in 2023. There's a 23-page bill that was passed by the House of Representatives ordering all 6 of our military services, all 18 of our United States intelligence agencies, and all 32 of our United States Defense Department agencies that are in possession of information about UFOs and the non-human intelligence, or ETs, that are responsible for them. They're understanding orders to gather all of that together and prepare to hand it over to the National Archives. That they will be required to have completed that job by September 30th. Okay. So that's still not in the summer. So it's not the summer of disclosure, but that information is required to be prepared for handing over to the National Archives as of September 30th this year. Now, the problem is the House of Representatives has changed the language. The Senate language required them to turn it over immediately to the National Archives. The House of Representatives, not surprisingly, had changed the language to say that they're required to turn it over to the National Archives as soon as possible. And the problem is they've all gone into these fits now about how hard it is to do it all. And, my mother's horse died and somebody spilled ink on my homework, and they're going through all this kind of razzmatazz of declining to do this right now. And so that we've got to, they're betting on, or basically they're betting against the citizens of the United States. They're betting that our citizens will not rise up and call them on this and demand to stop making fools out of us all by changing the language on the House side and then refusing to comply, with handing it over to the National Archives. But if we can get that bit of the language changed, if we can get the Senate bill adopted in its entirety, so that they're required not only to gather together all the information by September 30th, but they're required to turn it over immediately to the National Archives, then we will take the steps of nominating people to this 9-person panel. That the New Paradigm Institute is one of the groups that are going to be nominating 9 people. The majority and minority leaders of the House and Senate are going to be nominating 9 people. The head of the National Archives is going to be nominating 9 people. And so that there are a handful of us that are going to be making these nominations. But the fact of the matter is, even under the Senate bill, the president, Donald Trump, gets to decide who he wants to appoint to that board. Okay? And so that he does that. And then it has to go over to the Senate for approval. Okay? And almost certainly the Senate will approve virtually anybody that the president nominates. What we're hoping is the president is going to appoint people who are in fact nominated by the House and Senate, and by us, a limited number of public citizen organizations who have been authorized to nominate people. Okay. Now, we would like to have it be that the president is going to appoint the people we nominate, but it's much more likely he's going to appoint whoever he wants to, and as long as he doesn't appoint his 2 sons and daughter, to the committee, or somebody who is a Fox News correspondent, as long as he appoints people who are responsible and are in favor of disclosure, then the president there's a period of time, and it's set forth in the statute, going back and forth, him nominating and the Senate approving, just like a Supreme Court justice, that the process is putting together this 9-person panel. And then this panel is going to be drafting, per the bill, is going to be drafting a UFO controlled disclosure campaign plan. It says that, okay? And the statute has a 7-year sunset clause. So that all you have to do is be able to read a statute and say, look what they're talking about. They're talking about doing this process over a 7-year period. And so that it's not going to be the summer of disclosure where they're going to go boom and they're going to give it all to us. That this is going to be a 7-year process, pursuant to which they will roll out this information seriatim. At the same time, the long delayed efforts to start adjusting our human institutions on our planet to be able to absorb this information has to be taking place. That's what another one of the things our New Paradigm Institute is doing that virtually no one else is doing, because they're all waiting to see whether or not they're actually going to divulge the information. And they're saying, look, it's no use wasting our time figuring out how to respond to the divulgence of this information until we know they're going to do it. Now, that doesn't seem rational to us at the New Paradigm Institute. We think we ought to be prepared for this. We think we ought to figure out how we're going to adjust our financial institutions, our other economic institutions, our basic religious institutions, our universities. How are we going to, what kind of courses are we going to have teaching our next generation of students, in our entire human family about how to absorb this information? There are going to have to be whole majors in courses on how to do this, So
I don't think a lot of people have thought about this.
They haven't thought about that.
Yeah.
They aren't thinking. That's why the New Paradigm Institute is doing it. saying, look, we know that it's true. We know they've got the information. We know they've given it to the Senate. We know the Senate has the information. We know that they've agreed to pass the bill. We know that we can get it passed eventually through the House. And so that why postpone doing this? This is like being a bad student, like, waiting until a week before the finals to start reading the material.
Yeah, that would be me.
It's a bad student,
Yeah.
and so that we ought to be wise about what we're doing here. We know that the civilization exists. We know they're coming and going from our planet. We know that they have bases here on our planet. And it's almost certain, though we're not totally certain yet, that the national security state people must have established some sort of line of communication with them. There have to be at least some protocols that are in place, and there needs to be steps taken. Some steps have been taken, I assume, by the extraterrestrial people to try to deter our national security state from shooting them down like they've been doing. I mean, we're fortunate that they haven't responded, in some kind of violent way. And so what they've done is they've just refused to come when they try to lure them in, And you raise the issue of the Skywatch people, or people do say, the Skywatch people are now reaching out directly to them and inviting them to come in so they can show that they're really here. The problem is that's all being financed privately by investors, not public interest. It's not a 501c3. It's a private for-profit, funding, a group of investors. Say, what do they think they're purchasing here? They're gonna try to get patents on the technology, and so that we, the people, the way this ought to be treated is just like with Franklin Roosevelt. At the end of the Depression, he had the rural electrification program, that there was federal tax money paid to figure out how to establish electric power lines to get to the people that lived in the countrysides. And all of that was funded by the United States taxpayers. And the same thing with building the highways. The highways aren't owned by private, toll companies. That they were built, they were financed and built by our tax money. And the fact of the matter is that's the way we have to treat this technology. This technology, it needs to be available for everybody. Okay, and so the whole world, our whole human family has to gain from getting this information, not just a tiny few aerospace corporations that are going to make trillions of dollars by owning the technology and licensing it back to the government that actually captured these craft and are giving them to them. That's a terrible business plan.
It is, but it's so powerful. The power behind companies like this is, as is tremendous. Would you mind silencing your phone? Just your phone keeps ringing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in another location. Oh, sorry. Okay. So here's a question up here, and this is interesting. I've seen this put out there, and it's a question. I don't know if you can still hear me, Danny.
Yep, I've got it.
Yeah,
Yep.
It's on the. Thank you for doing that. The Buga. I don't know how you spell it, the Buga sphere found in Colombia, and I've seen some images of that. I don't know. Here's not a very good image of it, but it's interesting. They're saying there's a lot of debates about it, whether it's really something or not. I don't know if you've looked into any of that.
Yes, I have. The fact I just talked this morning with Jaime. That's Jaime holding it. That you see right there. That's Jaime Massad.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The instant that happened, Jaime called me, and we discussed this, and I agreed that it was worthy to go and check it out. He went to Colombia right away and secured it. I've asked them to be careful not to engage in any type of experimentations with it that could in any way damage the device. They've taken x-rays of it, MRIs, they're doing all kinds of efforts to try to see what's in it. He has told me that there's fiber optic technology inside the device. The device was videoed flying around is on video phones. He has secured copies of the videos, and he has the device. You know, I recommended right away. He called me right away, and I recommended that he get in touch with Gary Nolan at Stanford University, who has the kind of scientific instrumentalities capable of evaluating at subatomic levels the makeup of the material of which it's made, and can figure out ways of seeing inside the device, etc. That Jaime was concerned about trying to bring the ball, you know, through customs into the United States. He was afraid that it could be impounded, you know, even for potential national security reasons. And so
I think that's a pretty legitimate worry.
yeah. And so see, so that, you know, I mean, it's now that, as you see the shot of it, that's no known language, those kind of symbols and stuff that are all around the edges of it, that does not look like the same kind of symbols that I saw on the bottom of the dome of the saucer that I saw back in 1977. This is something different, you know, and there's no telling exactly what this is right now, but Jaime has it. That I've been consulting with him. He's been extraordinarily careful to maintain the chain of custody on this, so that we know that no one else is getting access to it. He keeps a close record of anybody who's been near it. That Jaime had asked Gary Nolan to come down to Mexico to investigate it down there, but you know, but the fact is the equipment that Gary would need to analyze it is back at Stanford. It's not exactly portable, you know, this type of equipment that's necessary to do this. So we're going to get this worked out and get this brought to him in the same way that there's now been some very major work done on some of the other artifacts that have been found. You have the mummies that were down in Ecuador. That they've done all kinds of MRI investigations of those. They've been doing genetic examinations of the genetic material of those mummies that have been recovered. There are these stones that have been recovered that are down in Mexico that have carvings that have clear like ET beings on them and saucers, UFOs. You know, and that there's a lot of major scientific work that's being done on those things. That our New Paradigm Institute is involved in attempting to facilitate completely professional, totally objective examinations of these things to get out and away from just wild rumors flying everywhere. And we will exercise great care over this and make this information available. And you know, we're going to be extremely careful about what it is that we affirm or endorse, because many people are going to be relying upon the New Paradigm Institute as a referent for being able to conclude what is realistically true about these things, not just these artifacts, but all kinds of stuff. You know, I'm going to be going and interviewing a person who asserts quite convincingly so far that he was one of the people that was present at the Trinity crash site in 1945. That we've now we now know where he lives. He's living with his daughter here in the United States. We're going to go and be interviewing him, so that this is what the New Paradigm Institute is doing, and we're trying to do it in cooperation with all of the other citizen groups. You know, with MUFON. You know, we're in close collaboration with the people at the UFO Contact in the Desert people there. And we just had a meeting today of 16 different organizations that had a long hour-and-a-half Zoom together, how we're going to coordinate and cooperate here to try to give the kind of support to the people in Congress that need to have it to be able to get these bills passed and to get this process underway. But at the same time, as you point out, we need to have somebody figuring out what the changes are that we're going to have to make in our culture,
Yeah.
you know, in our religions, going to have somebody that's in communication with Leo, the 14th, to have them discuss what it is they're going to be doing. You can bet that the people over there are already in discussions about what to do if the United States passes this law and starts a process of disclosure, that the Vatican is going to have to respond to this. They're going to have to consider, updating a lot of their theology to take into account this dimension of reality that they have not yet done. So this is an extraordinarily exciting period, Martin. I mean, if we can get the national security state boot, off our necks here, and keep them from trying to transmute this extraordinary opportunity into this potential for terrible, disaster, by poisoning our relationship with the extraterrestrial civilization. We're in the process right now of having to establish the protocols to pursuant to which we're going to be conducting our relations with this extraterrestrial civilization for the next 10,000 years. I mean, right now, in this 5 to 7 year period that we're in right now, and so that we've got to take seriously what's happening here, because people, 500 years from now are going to look back at this particular time and say, how responsible were you about figuring out these protocols and protecting our agency, protecting our human rights in the face of this new civilization? We don't want to be like that little island in the South Pacific back in 1955 that didn't know there was a world outside of their island. And as soon as they got discovered, within months, their entire civilization collapsed because they had not been able to accommodate this massive influx of new technology and information. We cannot allow that to happen. And the national security state is trying to threaten us, now, threatening to put people in prison if they talk about this, even threatening to potentially kill people to keep this secret, all under the auspices of the fact that somehow the Russians are going to find out that we've done
national security. I want to play a clip for you. I think you'll really like it a lot. Now, I recorded this at the first hearing, but before I want to also say, I do want to talk about what Kevin Wright wrote, that the disinformation paper. We'll be talking about that next, but I want to run this clip for you because I turned around at the hearing and I saw this Father Gray was his name, and I recorded this little clip right here.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being willing to talk.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry to the listeners for the background noise here. Nothing I can do about it. So, your name, please?
My name is Father Matthew Gray.
Welcome to the show. Thank you. And I want to find out, why are you here at the UAP hearing?
Because if this is true, which I personally believe it is true, this is life-changing. This is something that is not an American issue. It's a global issue. It's a human issue.
Yes.
And truth is truth. Truth needs to be known as much as anything else. We have a right to know and kind of delve into the implications of it. And this affects everything.
Right. And so I know you're not speaking for the church.
Right. Not speaking for the church. Just came here on my own volition. I am, of course, Catholic priest, and I wanted to know more about the hearing. Yeah.
And what do you think about what the Pope has said over the years about the possibility of extraterrestrial life?
The church has always been open to it. Anything that exists because God created it. So why would he not have created non-human intelligences other than ourselves? It further shows his goodness, his creativity, and the goodness of God. So the church has always been open to the possibility. In fact, Pope St. John Paul II was doing an interview, in a greeting line. A little girl came up to him, and she asked him straight out, Holy Father, do aliens exist? And he could have said no. He could have said, oh, that's silly. But he just stopped what he was doing, turned to the little girl, and said, don't ever forget, they're created by God and should be loved also. I thought that's beautiful. That's the essence of Christianity, right? It's the essence of our faith, to love one another and to treat each other with respect. So I think I'm looking forward to the church talking out more openly, especially as we ourselves learn more about it.
Now, the observatories. The Catholic Church has amazing observatories, one in Rome and one in the United States. And do you know anything about, have you ever heard anything about, I forget the name of the father that's the astronomer.
I forget his name too. It's 2006 and 2016, two different statements that came out about, if aliens do exist, then that just further shows God's creativity and his goodness. That it is possible. So it does not rule that out at all.
And I think there was something about baptizing them too. Did I hear that once?
I hadn't heard that one. That would be interesting.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for coming. And I'm glad you have the curiosity.
Absolutely. Stay curious, and thank you for asking.
You bet.
Yeah.
Right at the very end, you see Lou Elizondo walking over to get coffee. But what do you think about, he shows that they're at least open-minded to, the possibility. And he kind of says that, the Catholic Church is more or less open to the possibility that, God created. And so I think, I think, you mentioned this about religions, and I think maybe in some religions, but not so much probably the Catholic religion may be one of the ones that may accept more than others. I'm not sure, but they seem to be aware that there's a possibility of it. Yeah.
Well, the fellow whose name he couldn't remember is Jose Gabriel Funes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Funes is a friend of mine. He was the head of the Papal Observatory. He is the one who issued the statement on behalf of Pope Benedict the 16th on November 10th of 2009. Actually, the much more fulsome quote of saying that in light of the discovery of more and more of these new exoplanets, it has now become clear that much sooner than had been previously anticipated, life is going to be discovered elsewhere in the universe. And therefore, the time has arrived to commence the important conversation about the profound philosophical and theological questions that are posed to our human family by the discovery of life elsewhere in the universe. So I took advantage of the fact that I'd been the chief counsel for the United States Jesuit headquarters in their National Social Ministry Office for 10 years and contacted Jose Gabriel Funes immediately, flew to see him and sat down, and we started to discuss this. And within 2 minutes, he said, "Look, Danny, let's be clear. We're not talking about discovering some single cell life form under some frozen sea, on some distant moon circling a planet in some far distant star system." So we're talking about another highly intelligent, highly technologically developed, but distinctly non-human species right here in our Milky Way galaxy. That's what he said.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is what they know. And they know what's going on. I mean, this is an extraordinarily sophisticated group, the Jesuits, more so than most of them in the Catholic Church. That's why I was there, for 10 years, from 1975 to 1985, and I know that they're the ones that authorized me to serve as special counsel to the investigation that was asked for by President Carter, back in 1977. So we know that this is real, and the tactical question about how we go about revealing this to people in a democracy should not be under the control of the national security state. They have a certain prism or lens through which they see everything. I mean, that's their job. I mean, that's what they're assigned to do. So we have to get control of this and get it into the hands of Congress right away.
All right. Well, I want to say goodbye to everyone over at KGRA Radio. Thanks so much. And next week will be several interviews. I have a bunch of them scheduled So I'm not really sure how I'm going to work all that in, but we'll be back next week with probably Ross Coldhart and Ben Hansen and a few others like that. So thanks so much over at KGR Radio, and see you next week. So I'm going to continue on a little bit. So let's talk about, I saw on Twitter this paper that I'm going to pull it up here.
That's one we put out. We put out from the New Paradigm Institute. Right.
That's right. Looks like someone put a lot, and it was Kevin who actually put a lot of work into this, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And Kevin's been on the show a few times. He's a great guy, real positive person to have with you there. Now, let me just try to expand this out a little bit. I don't know if I can really do that, but I will try. And so let's kind of go over what this is about and all that. Let me see. I don't know if I can do this, but anyway, here's the abstract here. I'll have this down in the show notes as well. This is a PDF that's actually online. And do you want to just quickly, touch on exactly what you have here?
Yeah. What this is a primer, basically for American citizens who aren't familiar with all of this. This has been the substance of what I've been working on for 50 years, of all this information about the history, the now undisputed history of the activities on the part of the national security state to lie to us and to manipulate the news. Not that this isn't an attack on the news media as such. It's a criticism of the national security state infrastructure, that the Central Intelligence Agency's Operations Directorate, to be specific, working in joint harmony with the Joint Special Operations Command of the Pentagon, that they've engaged in a series of programs of generating active disinformation. That's what they call it. That's the euphemism for big fat lies, that they just flat lie, and that there's, as you see here, deliberate and strategic distortion of facts. That's another euphemism for a big fat lie. And that's what they're doing. And they've been engaged in big fat lies about the UFO issue ever since 1947. When they flat out lied and said that they had not recovered a UFO, that it was a crashed weather balloon. And then when the American people weren't really buying that and kept on reporting seeing these UFOs landing in their backyard and in their fields and being abducted by them and having direct contact with them, finally the United States national security state said, okay, so we're going to put together a panel of independent experts, and we're going to have a completely independent, objective investigation undertaken. And now, through the work of people such as the Richard Dolan, for example, in his 2-volume work called UFOs in the National Security State, he has gotten through the Freedom of Information Act and direct previously top secret classified documents showing that there was a conscious, intentional, willful program of lying that was set up, in the Robinson panel and in Project Blue Book and others, actively utilizing the tactics that were developed by the national security state to deceive our ostensible adversaries around the world, utilizing it against the American public, actively lying about this, and then using the excuse of, we had to lie to our American people in order to keep the information from being made available to our adversaries. I mean, this has been going on for decades now. For 80 years they've been doing this. And even when they came to the end of the Cold War, and when Gorbachev explicitly agreed to withdraw from the Cold War and agree to disassemble the nuclear warheads of their entire arsenal if the United States would do the same, that the administration of George Bush Sr., with his Secretary of Defense, Dick Cheney, and Paul Wolfowitz and Scooter Libby and that whole crowd inside the Defense Department, they immediately rejoiced and said, good, now we can establish full spectrum military dominance over the whole planet. And they actually said it. They had the 1992 United States Defense Department Policy Planning Guidance document. It was a top secret document where they were rejoicing over the fact that they were going to be able to establish military dominance over the planet. And that's what these 800 military bases are that are all around the planet right now. And so what this document is the New Paradigm Institute going forward and just very carefully explicating the undisputed record now that demonstrates the lying that they've been engaged in, not only about the UFO issue, but a handful of other programs that they engaged in. For example, Operation Mockingbird, where we discovered that there were 42 full-time paid Central Intelligence Agency people embedded inside major news media, usually as national security specialists, that they were national security reporters. And what they were doing is they were stifling news going out to the American public. When we, for example, we did the Iran-Contra case, where we caught them smuggling weapons to the Contras, out of the Pentagon and the CIA in absolute total defiance of Congress that had passed an actual law prohibiting them from providing any weapons to the Contras because the Contras were international criminals and everybody knew it. And when we caught them doing it and we brought information to the New York Times, the national security editors at the New York Times instructed their reporters, Keith Snyder was the guy. They said that when it was an embarrassing situation when Eugene Hasenfuss was shot down, the C-123 was shot down over Nicaragua, and Cooper and Sawyer were killed, the pilot and co-pilot, and Hasenfuss was captured by the Contras. I got the call from the Secretary of State of Nicaragua to send a Catholic priest down to interview Hasenfuss because he was hysterical and thinking he was going to be locked away in a gulag somewhere for the rest of his life. And so Father Bill Davis, I sent him down to interview him. And Father Davis explained to him in detail that we knew all about what they were doing. And he convinced him that we knew all about it because it was true. And so Hasenfuss then gave a public statement revealing what they were doing. And the whole thing started coming unwound. Okay. And so that there was a major event that was held in New York at the New School for Social Research. And I was on stage along with reporters from CBS and New York Times and others. And it was all reporters. There were like 100 reporters in the room because this was such a hot story coming out, right? And one of them confronted the New York Times, a foreign desk editor, and said, all this stuff about the Christic Institute. The Christic Institute has been talking about this for a year, telling everybody about this. Why is it you haven't published anything about it? And he said, I don't know. I don't know why we haven't published anything about it. And so they said, well, look, would you agree to send a reporter down to talk to Dan Sheehan and the people at the Christic Institute who've been doing this investigation? Would you agree to do that? And he said, okay, yes, I'll do that. So he sent down Keith Snyder, who was the agricultural reporter for the New York Times. He didn't have the slightest idea who the Contras were. He didn't know anything about foreign policy. He didn't know anything about Central America. And so I started to explain it to him in some detail and showed him documents and everything. So he was astonished. He said, oh, wow. And he goes back to his editors and he lays it all out for them. And I'm waiting for the story to come out. Nothing happens for like 2 or 3 or 5 days. So I call him. I say, Keith, what's the story? He said, oh, I've got to come down and talk to you. He comes down and he said, well, the national security editors said that we couldn't publish anything about this.
They killed it.
And that in fact, they wanted us to write a story that was critical of the Christic Institute. And I said, well, listen, I said, like, why don't I take and introduce you to some of the pilots that are flying the weapons down there and actually flying the cocaine back, into the United States. Why don't I? And so I did. Well, I introduced him to them, and they showed him the maps that they had, the code words they used to fly in to the bases down there.
Unreal.
And he goes running back to his editors and told him, look at what we've got. We've got the goods on these people completely. And he was told by the national security reporter that he couldn't report it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that
make them look like fools, really.
They've got people embedded in there. And this isn't to justify the right-wing attack on the news media. This is to point out that the national security state that we began this conversation about is so pervasive in the country that this article that we've written from the New Paradigm Institute, laying out undisputed proof that they've been engaged in this kind of systematic lying in manipulating the American public, all on behalf not of some left-wing agenda like the Trump people are saying, but actually on behalf of protecting the activities of the national security state, which is, according to the 1992 United States Defense Department Policy Planning Guidance document, the objective of maintaining our continued privileged access to the strategic raw materials needed by the major corporations of our country, because they believe that what's good for General Motors is good for the country. That if you can get the resource, if the military secures control over the resources go to the corporations. They produce more material. They give more jobs. They pay more taxes. That's what they believe. The problem is that's what fascism is. That's exactly what Mussolini wrote about in his essay in 1933. That it's the putting at the disposal of the major corporations the instrumentalities of the government. Okay,
I have heard that a lot of times we'll get involved in some type of conflict because of the resources, like lithium or oil. Otherwise, if it was a poorer country and they're fighting them, like the Houthis or whatever, they're fighting among themselves, genocide, and we're not even getting involed in it because there's no resources.
It's complete. And you have Dave Talbot's book. It's called the Great Chess Game, or the Devil's Chessboard. It's called David Talbot, and he details again all the details of how the Central Intelligence Agency is actually instigating wars into areas where they want to get a hold of their resources, and overthrew the government, the democratically elected government in Iran. Throughout Mossadegh, and put in the Shah of Iran because he would agree to allow the United States oil corporations to come in and take control of all their oil. Now this is not crazy bizarre talk. This is all very clearly established now over the last 50 years. I spent 50 years since the time I was at Jesuit headquarters laying this out in details, been willing to go into courts of law and present the evidence to juries, having to climb over the top of judges that have been appointed by the national security state. The judges we had in the Iran-Contra case, James Lawrence King, was appointed by Richard Nixon, trained by the Central Intelligence Agency as a Central Intelligence Agency judge, direct witnesses who saw him being trained by them. And he just did everything in the world he could to keep us from getting it revealed that they were smuggling weapons to the Contras in complete defiance of Congress, and then you still discover, he was nominated at the recommendation of B.B. Rebozo, a major criminal in the mafia down in Miami, and that James Lawrence King was a former member of the board of directors of Meyer Lansky's National Bank of Miami, the treasurer for the mafia. I mean, look at but it isn't. I'm not suggesting that people run and jump out of a first-story window because you're discovering that there's no Santa Claus. what I'm saying here is that this entire UFO issue is revelatory of the continued operations of a national security state in our country, and everybody else around the world knows about it. It's us here in the United States that don't bother to pay attention to that. And that what I'm saying is that since there's such a consensus across the entire political spectrum of people who want to know about the UFOs and want to know about the extraterrestrial civilization that they represent and the different species that are coming and going from our planet, that this is an opportunity for us to stand down this national security state and to establish a treaty among Russia and the United States and China, in India, in all of the major governments of the world, that we will agree not to shoot down the UFOs, not to engage in warlike activities against them, not to, in fact, use their technology to try to develop an entire new generation of weapons against each other. That we're going to work together as a human family to try to figure out what kind of amendment we need to make to our institutions, our governing institutions, our economic institutions, our religious institutions, our universities, our educational institutions. What kind of changes are we having to make here in order to absorb this information and have it be mutually beneficial for all of us and for the extraterrestrial civilization, assuming that we have something unique to contribute other than cage fighting, and pornography. I mean, that we've got to be able to elevate our human consciousness and merit citizenship in this galactic civilization, and that this presents us with an absolutely unique opportunity to do this. But we have to be willing to be honest with ourselves and to recognize. I mean, we can let them get away with saying, because of the Cold War, we got in the habit of lying to our people to conceal the evidence from our adversaries, and we just didn't know enough to stop. When the Soviet Union dissolved and said, let's stop this craziness, that we just got our momentum kind of carried us on, for another 30, 40 years. Fine. Let them apologize to us about it, and we'll understand, okay, you're only human, you got carried away, but we've got to undo this now. Okay, we've got to find out what's really going on. We got to get beneath this problem to tell our people what the truth is and get busy changing our institutions on our planet so that we can benefit from this and share the benefits with all of our human family. That's what the New Paradigm Institute is all about. And so that we're asking people to contact us at newparadigminstitute.org. There it is, right at the bottom of the screen, and become members of Citizens for Disclosure. That is totally free. You just sign up, you come in, you click the link, and you can be made a member of the Citizens for Disclosure. You give us your zip code so that we know what your congressional district is, so we can send to you crafted, customized information about your congressperson. 85% of the people in the country don't even know who their congressperson is. And so that we say, okay, look, we're here to be of assistance. We'll share with you who your congressperson is. Here's how they voted on everything. Here are the ones that really support what we're doing. Here are the ones that need more information. Show to them that you're willing to support them if they'll help get this information out. This is a course in civics, the UFO issue.
Yeah. Hey, I'd like to pose some questions. Some people have put some questions up here for you, and then we'll be wrapping up soon after that. Was anything? Thank you, Thomas, for this. Was anything from the last 3 hearings revolutionary from your perspective as someone who is in the legal field?
No, but that's not the fair standard. I mean, I've been working on this for 50 years, and I'm thoroughly familiar with all the other kind of things they've done, the machinations they've done. The question, if you would allow me to kind of reframe it, was there anything that might be viewed as revolutionary from the point of view of the average American citizen? Yes, yes. When you have David Grusch sit in front of them and say, "Here, I was the liaison from the National Reconnaissance Office, one of the most highly sophisticated intelligence units of our entire government, and I was assigned to the UFO task force. And I'm telling you that based on interviewing 40 live people, that I'm convinced that we're in possession of a non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft, and the bodies of the non-human occupants of it that have been verified now to be non-human." Okay, that is revolutionary for the average person to hear that. And when you hear Luis Elizondo in the hearing being asked by Burleson, Congressman Burleson from Missouri, saying, "Look, Mr. Elizondo, if you and I were to be allowed to get into a skiff, one of these classified boxes where nobody can eavesdrop on you, and since we both have these security clearances, would you be able to give to me the evidence that would prove to me as a skeptic beyond any reasonable doubt that we're in possession of one or more non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft and the bodies of the occupants that have been proven to be non-human? Number one, do you believe that those things are true?" And Luis Elizondo said, "Yes, that's true. Both of those things are true." And so he said, "Well, would you be able to share with me the evidence that can prove that to me?" And Luis Elizondo said, No, I wouldn't be allowed to do that. That would have to be somebody above me that would have to be authorizing that. What they're telling them is, we're not going to tell you. We're not going to tell you, the Congress of the United States, about the information that we have that proves that it's true. Okay, now that is revolutionary. I mean, the average person, now that is even a little bit revolutionary to me, to realize that they could have the audacity to tell them directly to their face that they're not able to give them the evidence to show them that it's true. That's a violation of our Constitution. That's why Lou Elizondo filed the complaint. Lou Elizondo contacted me and asked me to work with him to file the complaint with the Inspector General of the Defense Department, because he was outraged that they were lying to the Congress of the United States. That they wouldn't even, and not only would they not even tell them the truth, but they would lie to them and say, "Oh, we don't know what you're talking about. We have no evidence that there's any extraterrestrial civilization. We don't have any evidence that there's any kind of a non-human craft that we're, it's a total absolute lie." They're treating us like we're the enemy. That they have to treat us in the same way that they would treat their enemies. And why are the people their enemies? Because we're trying to get access to the resources in their countries, and we've got 800 military bases through which to do it. And we're cruising around, with massive aircraft carriers. And it's just like the lie they told about the Vietnam War, that somehow our innocent warships were just kind of cruising on the high seas, and they were attacked by North Vietnamese gunboats. Total lie, an absolute total fabrication, of the Bay of Tonkin, and so that they could justify sending, 50,000 United States Marines into their country so they could seize their resources and establish a military base on the peninsula of Indochina. We've got to clearly name the beast here that we're dealing with, and it's not Russia, and it's not China, and it's certainly not the UFO people, it's the national security state in our country, and that we've got to be mature enough to step back away from this, disassemble this. At the same time, we get Russia and China to disassemble their national security state, to persuade India to start to disassemble their national security state, so that it's not a matter of stripping ourselves of our defenses against a potential extraterrestrial attack. That's such poppycock. these guys could dance on our grave if they chose to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and it's preposterous. Oh, Sheehan's involved in trying to disarm us, so that we can't defend ourselves against the extraterrestrial people. I mean, how totally ridiculous is that?
Yeah. Here's another question, kind of a little bit aimed in that direction. What is Project Golden Dome really about? And that is, that's like a defense, missile defense system, a layered missile defense system, or something like that, right?
Well, there's a bit of confusion going on here, because the Trump designated this desire he has to spend trillions of dollars building an iron dome over our country, in the same way that Israel has built this iron dome over their country. But of course, knowing Trump, it couldn't be iron; it had to be gold. And it's this
Oh, is that?
golden
Oh, I
dome.
thought it was about a missile system or something. It's not that.
It is. That's what they call it. What it is, it's a missile system that is able to knock out the missiles coming in.
Right.
That's what happens
Yeah.
in the Iron Dome in Israel. Is a set of special missiles, anti-missile missiles, that
Yeah.
can shoot down missiles coming in. And so it constitutes a metaphorical Iron Dome over the state of Israel. And he's talking about trying to do that here in the United States. But he's conflating it. And I think the questioner was asking another question. Golden Dome is the actual name of a highly secret, above top secret surveillance system that has been developed by the Central Intelligence Agency, that is able to detect UFOs even when they're still cloaked, when they're still vibrating at a frequency that it makes it impossible for us to see them, and for our radar to detect them. And what they do is they rheostat down into a lower vibrational frequency, and they come into material manifestation here on our planet. And so that's like, for example, when Matthew Brown was talking in his interview with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp about the fact that they had this group of Russian intelligence vessels out in the Pacific under direct surveillance, and they were videoing them, and all of a sudden this big football field sized triangular craft just slowly materialized right above those ships. So that there's a technique that the craft have, and so that this Russian intelligence gathering operation was somehow able to predict where this thing was going to materialize. Well, that process, I believe, the evidence shows that it isn't that they're coming from some other dimension. What it is, that this is a function of the way they transport. So they have their craft in their star system on their planet, and what they do is they engage in this. It's like this super technologically revved up ability to remote view, that they can basically remote view a place on our planet, and they can visualize their craft being there. And it's a kind of it's a variation on the double slit experiment, where directed human intention, actually can collapse the wave function, so that an inchoate reality can actually condense out of the range of possibilities through directed human intention. That it appears that the ET people have developed a technology whereby they can gin up their ability to focus their attention to actually transport a craft from point A to point B, and it doesn't require a linear travel. It just is like teleportation, And I had a long interview with Edgar Mitchell one time when he was still alive, and he told me that his best friend, whom I deduced was Cooper, but he wouldn't admit it, but he said saw an actual experiment back in the 1960s where they actually had a room with a Coca-Cola bottle in it, and had the Cooper sign his name on a little piece of paper and fold it up and put it in the Coke bottle. And then they turned this ray onto it, and it kind of slowly disappeared. And they go over into the other room and they walk in there, and there's the Coke bottle slowly materializing. And then they pull the little note out of it, and there's his signature. And they showed that they actually had figured out some of the teleportation technology that these craft actually have. And that all of this is by way of answering his question about the Golden Domes. The Central Intelligence Agency developed a super secret surveillance system called the Golden Domes that was able to detect the UFOs before they materialized, and they could locate them moving around our planet when they were in a non-manifest state, and so that we could locate them. And people go, "Oh no, you're divulging one of the most top secrets of our entire government." I said, so what? What, that we can detect the UFOs? Fine. Whether they think we're espionage agents for the UFO civilization or something? No. And it isn't as though the UFO people didn't know they were doing it, because they obviously have known they're doing it.
Here's another question here about General Hayam Rashid. He's the Israeli space director. Why he's like 95 years old or something at this point. So I don't think he'll be testifying. I know he's made some comments about extraterrestrials. You know anything about them?
No. I mean, I know what he said. And it's not clear what the basis is on which he bases it. So I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, there, as I mentioned earlier, there are a cadre of witnesses that the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Senate as a whole, the House Oversight Committee know about and could call publicly to testify, but they aren't doing it. In my opinion, that they're failing to perform their constitutional obligation. It's not clear to me why they're withholding them. All they have to do is start rolling them out one at a time, and it's going to start convincing more and more members of the Senate and the House that they better do something about this, because the evidence is overwhelming about this. They've got people who have been in the room with them. I mentioned that, what's his head? I'm trying to remember the guy who testified about it. He mentioned it in Jay Stratton. Jay Stratton used to be the head of AUSAP, which is the Advanced Weapons Special Access Program, in the Pentagon. And in the latest this documentary film called Age of Disclosure, he states right flat out that he has been actually physically in the presence of a non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft, and that he's been in the presence, seen with his own eyeballs, a UFO being.
Well, these are the type of people, the type of witnesses that are going to move things forward if they, testify under oath in front of Congress or some type of body of government. I hope that happens.
Well, and the question is, why aren't they doing it? I mean, why isn't the Senate calling him and putting him right in front of everybody and saying, here, so that they're playing footsie. I mean, they're playing footsie with the national security state people, because they depend upon the national security state people, and that they're afraid of the national security state people at the same time, because they'll knock them right out of office if they don't. And that the national security state is calling the shots here. And so the real question that people ought to be asking is, why has the national security state suddenly decided, or at least as of 2017, why have they decided that they're going to start coming forward with more and more of this information? And certain people speculate about it. Dr. Stephen Greer says he thinks that they're setting up, a false flag attack. So they're trying to get people acclimated to the reality that the UFOs are real, so that if they stage such an attack, that the people are going to go crazy and give the national security state even more power, to do, and more money to do whatever they want with. I don't agree with that. I've disagreed publicly with Stephen on that, but I don't put it past them, as I've told people, that I know that the national security state is constantly running out war game scenarios. It doesn't mean they're going to do it, but that it's not above them to do something like that. I just don't think that they're doing that. But I do realize that they're engaged in attempting to choreograph this process, and they believe that they're going to be able to choreograph it in a manner that they will not ever have to reveal everything. That's the problem. They don't want to reveal everything, and so that we want them to reveal everything.
Here's an interesting question here, and thank you all in chat for being available and asking these questions. We're going to be wrapping up soon. I'll try to get to one more after this one. So this is from Tony. Thank you, Tony. Might there be an international agreement that stops the U.S. from revealing everything? Maybe the USA isn't the be-all, end-all.
Well, let me tell you, the U.S. is the be-all and end-all.
Okay.
So you'll know, I mean, they're getting to be less and less the be-all and end-all because Trump is withdrawing from NATO. He's functionally abandoning all of them. He's incoherent. He doesn't have a policy that anybody can really tell what's going on anymore. He could be ruining the entire capability of the United States to dominate all world politics. Okay. Now, that might not be the worst thing in the whole world, because as I've said, the power to dominate the entire world has been being misused by the United States and by the major corporations that are hand in glove with the national security state in the past. And this may be the cost that we're ending up having to pay, because they've been so abusive of this, that when the point comes now that one person can utilize that in such an arbitrary and capricious way, that the rest of the world is going to stop kowtowing to the United States. That may be true. But I don't think that there's an if there's any international agreement pertaining to the UFO issue, you can bet your bottom dollar that the U.S. has been the one that has crafted the treaty, and has made everybody else abide by it. Because up until very recently, basically until the most recent election, the United States was absolutely the be-all and end-all. Nobody could really do much of anything on the international level without the United States agreeing. So that any treaty that was in place prior to this particular administration would have been, in fact, choreographed by the U.S.
Here's a kind of a related question here. What happens if another country discloses first ahead of us?
Yeah, I mean, what would happen? The problem is that this could be used as a weapon. This disclosure process could be used as a weapon.
Power.
They could disclose it in a way that would completely undermine, for example, the American dollar, which is the petroleum dollar. They could say, here's a brand new form of energy. We're going to make it available to the whole world right now. The entire oil is completely antiquated. It's ridiculous to think you have to be burning oil and ruining the entire global ecosystem. And the American dollar collapses, the entire economic system starts to be unstable. The United States loses its advantage in all kinds of different ways, and it could be used as a weapon. And the problem is that that's our job. Our job is to figure out how to make this a weapon, and they haven't figured out how to do it yet. So that's why they're all shifting from one foot to another, going, oh, how can we manage this? And so they've tried. They're in the process of trying this kind of slow disclosure process to see how well they can get away with, I assume, concealing some of the most sensitive secrets that they don't want to reveal. The old adage is the best way to keep a secret is to pretend that you've revealed it.
Yeah. Here's a question I'd like to ask. This will be our final question tonight. Thank you, everyone in chat, for your questions. But I still hear that there's still things going on. The question is, what do you make of the White House's official explanation of the New Jersey drones? Not just New Jersey; they're everywhere. But
well, there's a technical legal term they have for what this is. Total bullshit is what it is. It's total bullshit. Not only that, but the fact that they would even dare do it, is just fits in with so many other things they're saying, which is just completely lies, so that it's total bullshit. I mean, you got thousands of these things all around, all over the place, and people go, "Oh, well, no, these are all FAA authorized, and they're all just flying around." They
after the FAA said they didn't know what they were.
That's right. Well, don't let that stop them. I mean, don't let that interfere with a good lie. I mean, look at the point is that there has to be a limit. Our human family has to have a limit of what we will tolerate. The national security state is asking us to praise their new suit of clothes. And we're saying the emperor has no clothes. This is you are stripped bare. You've been exposed to the whole world now as to what you're doing. And if you want to cooperate and back out of this, we'll assist you in it. The citizens will rise up and support a step-by-step disassembling of the national security state infrastructures of all of the national security state governments around the world. Okay, and do it in a multi-partisan, a multilateral way, because it's actually to the advantage of most all the rest of the countries in the world to agree to do this. Just like Russia and China agreed early on during the atomic age, they would agree to forego any development of any nuclear weapons at all if the United States would agree to disassemble what they'd done. And the United States wouldn't do it. Primarily, according to Gorbachev, when we talked with him about it, is because the elite in the United States know that they have to have these in order to back off China, and to get at the resources in Asia. They have to have a weapon system because they can't confront China in a traditional war, because China showed them at Incheon and at the reservoir that it showed them that they could put 1 billion men in uniform against our forces in Korea, which is what they did, and so that this elite in the United States believes they have to have nuclear weapons. And so and it's a complete fantasy to think that whatever new development we make in the nuclear weapons industry isn't going to be discovered by Russia and China within a decade, and they're going to then have the same thing, and then it's just a mutual terror of each other. We have got to understand that we as a human family are being presented here with an opportunity to step into an entire new kind of civilization that can eschew the weapon systems, that can eschew trying to steal everybody else's resources. We have an opportunity to travel to the stars. We have an opportunity to have resources beyond our most wild imagination, okay? And we don't have to fight each other over limited resources on our planet. If we can only rise to the occasion. And when I say rise to the occasion, I mean rise in our levels of consciousness is what we need to do. And we need to reach out to the ET people through telepathic communication. You can talk about it out loud if you want to, and at the same time you're using telepathy to try to raise we have to engage in citizen diplomacy. We have to step over the top of these government officials if they will not perform their constitutional obligations. And they have to stop lying to the people, make this information available, fulfill their constitutional obligations in the Congress to rein in the national security state. We've got to get the national security state to refrain from trying to establish full military dominance over the planet. We got to stop them from trying to secure and maintain a privileged access on the part of our 4.5% of the population of the entire planet, so that we can reap the benefits of some 40% of all the non-renewable resources that are developed on the planet every year. We've got to step back from this, okay? If we're going to merit citizenship in this galactic civilization, because they're not going to let us come out there. Not only not let us come out there carrying nuclear weapons, they're not going to let us come out there at all.
Yes, I had Professor Robin Hansen on last week that kind of addressed that whole thing, like a little bit of a control that he thinks that they may have on us. He was fascinating. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he'd be really someone you'd be interested in listening to. Danny, thank you so much, and I'll see you in just a couple of days. I'll be out in California. I'll see you out there.
Yeah, we're taking off actually tomorrow morning to drive to there. I've got a big presentation on Thursday at 1 o'clock. I've got actually 4 90-minute presentations to make at the Contact in the Desert, and 3 panels. So I'm going to get a chance to see everybody and get to share the information about the New Paradigm Institute and the Citizens for Disclosure. And I just want people to sign up. Just contact us. It's all free, and you can get the information that you need to really help mobilize our people and help educate your fellow citizens about this extraordinarily important information.
Well, great work, Danny. Thank you so much.
Terrific. Thanks, Martin.
All right.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Okay. All right, everyone. So remember, if you'd like to reach out to me if you're going to be out at Contact Martin at podcastufo.com. And next week will be interviews from there. Thanks so much, everyone, for participating tonight. Good questions in chat. And remember to keep your eyes to the sky.